as they stared at her like deer in headlights. Susan arched her brow angrily. Richard's assured smile fell off his lips and onto the floor. Beside him, Penelope gave a weird giggle. She had recently quit her job as his secretary because he had given her the cash to go back to college. At least, that was the gossip Susan had heard. She hadn't bothered to ask Richard about it. Richard smeared his hand across the back of his head. There was just the beginning of a bald spot under his still jet-black hair. He looked thin and powerful, much better in the suit she didn't recognize than he had in years. Probably he and Penelope worked out together. That was the kind of thing younger couples did, and these days Richard was nothing but a wannabe younger man. In the middle of a midlife crisis, she thought to herself. "I just came to get the rest of my things from my office," Susan said. She didn't give him any kind of smile. He didn't deserve it. "Right, you had said that. I forgot," Richard replied. His voice was gravelly and dark, almost dangerous. She remembered when he had talked to criminals like that in their first few years as lawyers for Harris & Harris. His eyes had flickered dangerously. Now she was the danger. The final block in the road between him and his happiness. But she was on her way out. "Excuse me," Susan said. She shot forward and cut between Penelope and Richard. Penelope hopped to the side, her ankle crumpling a bit as she went. She had always worn 6-inch heels, and today was no different. "Don't let your husband hire a hot secretary," her friends told her repeatedly. "But I trust him. We're professionals. We're criminal lawyers, for goodness sake. Richard knows there are more meaningful things in life. He respects his family. He respects me." When she reached the elevator, Richard called for her. "Susan, you're going to get the last of your stuff out tonight, right?" She whipped around, her nostrils flared. Her dark brunette hair wafted down her shoulders. "We have a few more things to discuss before I leave." Penelope looked anxious. To be honest, Susan enjoyed the strange expression she wore. She looked like a child stuck in the middle of an adult conversation. "But I wouldn't want to keep you now for that discussion," Susan said brightly. "I know you have much better things to do than to talk about the good old days with your ex-wife." The words were obviously cutting. They held the kind of emotion behind them that she'd always used while working as a lawyer beside him. Her friends had laughed about this many times when she had told them, "Imagine 2 lawyers getting divorced. You'll destroy each other with all the games you'll play." Truthfully, though, Susan didn't want anything to do with all these strange and sinister games. It had been a moment of weakness, that was all. Outside, she inhaled the late May summery air and gripped the edge of her Prius to steady herself. Just a few parking spots away sat Richard's newly purchased Lamborghini. He didn't care about the destruction of the environment or anyone else but himself, for that matter. The streets of Newark, New Jersey were congested. Dropping her head against her car seat, Susan listened as the radio crackled from weather to a 90s song she had loved, then back to an interview with a Green Party candidate. She glanced at her fingers on the steering wheel, which were bare and void of rings. Taking them off had been a huge weight off her chest, freedom from the man who couldn't love her anymore. Wasn't that enough? They had bought the massive house in Newark when their business had boomed, and they had invested in a few key companies. It had 6 bedrooms, a small indoor pool, a downstairs bar area where they'd always played board games as a family, and a gorgeous garden in the back. Susan had liked to keep the garden up herself at first, but had soon passed that off to a gardener when she'd had too many cases to go over. There was never enough time in the day. She parked her Prius in the back, with its private entrance to the apartment attached to the main house. As she headed toward the door, she stopped to gaze at the gorgeous rose bush that had, strangely enough, decided to bloom a tiny bit early. They'd already had plenty of warm days, and its bright red petals had sprung forth. For whatever reason, the sight of this filled